Right, people, welcome to JP Boxing. I've got a really interesting topic for us to discuss today. I'm sure if you're a hardcore boxing fan or just even a boxing fan in general like me, you saw that video of Andre Ward and Terence Crawford sparring pop up on your YouTube recently, and I'm sure, like me, you was like, shit, what the fuck? I've got to go and watch that straight away. And it got me thinking, obviously, those two guys are the two of the best American fighters of all time. You'd put them up there, but definitely of like this generation and this era. Not even just American fighters, just fighters worldwide, internationally, period. They're two of the very best to do it over the last 15, 20 years or so. I said in a lot of people's eyes, maybe of all time. And it got me thinking, like, since I've started watching boxing, probably, I'm 27 now, I started watching it, like, obviously I always watched it even when I was a kid, getting raised and stuff, obviously my parents watching it and that. But, like, since I've started watching it, like, hardcore, obsessed with it myself, going out of my way, watching it, like, even when I'm not with my parents and stuff, I think I was about 14 years old. So that's 13 years ago now. And it got me thinking, like, who are the best American fighters that I can think of that I've witnessed, I've watched over those last 13 years. And I thought for this video, obviously it gave me an idea to do a video straight away. I thought it'd be a brilliant topic to discuss with you guys, and you can come back and let me know if you think I'm missing any of these fighters or if you disagree with how I rate and rank these fighters. But I thought obviously I'll round it up. 13 years a bit random. I'll round it up to the last 15 years. And that's kind of what you look at when you're thinking of like an era or a sort of generation of fighters. It's probably around 15 years you look at. So obviously we're in 2024 now, going back to 2009. I've done a bit of research. Obviously I had some that were clearly at the top of my head already. And yeah, I've come up with, and obviously I'll put it out there are so many brilliant American fighters over the last 15 years. Like you could think of like 50 or more world-class ones. But I'm talking about the guys that have gone to that next level, the elite, the creme de la creme, the cream of the crop, the ones that are like a cut above the rest of the fighters in their weight class or around their weight classes, the ones that broke into that pound for pound top 10 or maybe top 5, or even in some cases for the top 3, reach that pound for pound #1 spot. So yeah, I've come up with 7 fighters. I've put them all in order of how I rate and rank them too. Obviously, I'll start with the top 3, the 3 that you're going to see on the thumbnail of this video. So I'll start with those guys and then I'll go for the other 4 that I've got after that. But the 3 obviously that I've got at the top are 3 that I know nobody can disagree with having in there. You might disagree with how I rank and rate them, but when you're looking back over the last 15 years, these are the 3 best American fighters without doubt. So we'll start with number 1. It's going to be a pretty obvious one. I'm pretty sure everybody has this guy as their #1 American fighter of the last 15 years. And that is obviously Mr. Floyd Mayweather Jr. Do I need to go into much detail about how good this guy was, is, whatever, however you want to say it? 50-0, 27 KOs. Obviously, we're looking at here what they've done after 2009. So I'm not going to go through his earlier wins and stuff like that. But if you just look at who he beat after 2009, Juan Manuel Marquez, Shane Mosley, Victor Ortiz, Miguel Cotto, Canelo, Maidana twice, Manny Pacquiao, and he got in there and absolutely dominated and schooled all of these guys. It weren't even close, any of these fights really. I know some people say the Cotto fight was close. When you go back and watch it, it wasn't really. And I know a lot of people say the Maidana fight, first one was close. When you go back and watch it, it wasn't. He won both of those fights clearly. And if you look, people say that Floyd Mayweather, or there's still some haters out there that say he didn't fight the best. That's already a great resume just for his wins after 2009. And that was when he was up at welterweight. Obviously, he's got all his wins at super feather, lightweight and light welterweight. You could go into if you was looking at his whole career. But even after 2009, Floyd Mayweather is without doubt the best fighter of the era. 5-weight world champion if you look at his whole career too. Unbelievable fighter, one of the very best of all time. There's no doubt he's the best fighter, best American fighter of the last 15 years, and best fighter period, any nationality of the last 15 years. No doubt about that one. Let me know if you disagree with that one, but I'll be very, very surprised if anyone does. Moving on to number 2, Terence Bud Crawford is who I've got at number 2. Unbeaten himself, 40-0, 31 KOs. Obviously still fighting now. I'm just checking here. Only one of 2 fighters I've got in these top 7 of the last 15 years that is still fighting and still active now. I'm recording this on the Thursday actually before he goes up and fights Israel Madrimov at light middleweight, challenging for a world title in a full weight division. If you want to go and check out my prediction video for that, if you're watching this after that fight's happened, I'm sure he's become that 4-weight world champion and added even more to his legacy. But if we look at what he's done already, 3-weight world champion, 2-weight undisputed, the first male fighter to ever do that in the 4-belt era. His wins, if you look at world level, Ricky Burns, Gamboa, before when Gamboa was unbeaten and still really, really highly rated, battered and stopped him. Victor Postol when he was unbeaten and highly rated. Amir Khan, Mean Machine, Kell Brook, Sean Porter, David Avanesian, and obviously recently absolutely smashed his biggest rival of this generation and era, Errol Spence, took him apart and showed people why he has been considered one of the very best pound for pound of this last era. And in my opinion, he is one of the best of all time too, up there with Floyd Mayweather. Hasn't had as many big opportunity fights to show that, but I think from what we've seen of Terence Crawford, he is up there with the best of all time, American and worldwide. Number 3, some people might have this guy as their number 2. I think it's close between him and Crawford, but I just think Crawford is a better fighter and has obviously achieved more. But this guy is top class too. The guy who I actually mentioned sparring Terence Crawford. If you haven't watched that, go and watch it. Obviously, they don't go flat out on each other, but it's so great to see 2 of the best technicians and tacticians go at it and try and figure each other out. The man I'm talking about in number 3 is Mr. Andre Ward. 32-0, 16 KOs, 2-weight world champion, obviously at super middleweight and then light heavyweight, retired unbeaten, just like Floyd Mayweather. Will Crawford go on to retire unbeaten? He probably will, unless he goes up to super middleweight and fights Canelo, but that's a video for another day. Stay tuned and subscribe if you want to see that one too. But yeah, obviously he was the pound for pound number 1 for a good few years too. Wins over Mikhail Kessler, Arthur Abraham, Carl Froch, Kovalev twice. Obviously, absolutely battered Kovalev in the rematch. Up at light heavyweight when Kovalev was seriously feared, unbeaten. It was one of the most, maybe the most dangerous, feared fighter on the planet. Ward went up, beat him on points, and then absolutely smashed and dominated him in the rematch. A brilliant fight that probably could have done more, but he believes he retired at the right time. Some people believe he retired too early. There was a few more big fights out there for him, but hey, he retired with all his brain cells still intact, a great bank balance, and still going on and staying involved in the boxing world now, so you can't hate on it, man. So yeah, that's my top 3. They're a cut above the rest. In my opinion, a big cut above the rest. Now 4 to 7. They're still elite level guys. I just think these top 3 here, from what they've done after 2009, is like all-time great shit. Number 4 though is an all-time great fighter, but his career actually started back in, I think it's like late 1980s or early 1990s, which is absolutely crazy when you think I've still got him in my top 7 American fighters of the last 15 years, like 20 or so years after he started his career. The man, you know, must know what I'm talking about, is Bernard Hopkins. 155, lost 8, drawn 2, knocked out 32. He's 59 years old right now in 2024, and I've got him in my list still of the best fighters of this era. That shows you how great his achievements were. After 2009, he's like in his like mid-40s, going into late 40s, and he was still world champion, beating world-class fighters. Roy Jones Jr., albeit a past Roy Jones Jr., who is actually younger than him though, which shows you that Bernard Hopkins is not considered past it, even though he was and Roy Jones was, even though Bernard Hopkins is like 5 years older than him. John Pascal, he beat him, and I was thinking, like, this sort of win is mad. At 46 years old, which is like what Floyd Mayweather is now, it's like Floyd Mayweather coming back and beating like a Tim Tszyu or a Virgil Ortiz or someone like that, like a highly rated younger guy. If Floyd Mayweather come back now, everyone would be like, oh my God, that's why Mayweather's so amazing. It's not, I don't even know if Mayweather would beat those guys now, but if he did, everyone would be like, that's all-time great shit. And that's what Bernard Hopkins has done. Tavoris Cloud, he beat an unbeaten Tavoris Cloud. Shumanov, yeah, man, to be world champion at 49, I think it was 50 years old, he actually held the belt to. That is just absolutely incredible, all-time great stuff, man. And that's kind of why, obviously, and then if you go back and look what he did before 2009, which I'm not taking in consideration for this, Bernard Hopkins is an all-time great fighter, and you might even have him above the likes of Crawford and Ward in your all-time great list. But if we're looking at what they did after 2009, he goes in at number 4 for me. Right, now on to number 5. People might be thinking now, oh, I'm struggling to think of who else JP's got in there now. Like, they're the 4 main ones, the obvious ones. Who have I got next? And I'll admit I had to do some research for these guys and think, because there was a lot, but I thought, like, who's a cut above the rest? Number 5 is one of my favourite fighters of all time, maybe my favourite fighter of all time, Timothy Bradley. 133, lost 2, drawn 1, knocked out 13. Again, like, just the resume that Timothy Bradley has. If you look who he beat: Kendall Holt, Nate Campbell, Lamont Peterson, Abregu, Devin Alexander, Joel Casamayor. A lot of when these guys were still unbeaten. Had that absolute war with Provodnikov, one of the best fights you'd ever see. My favourite fight of all time. Beats Juan Manuel Marquez. A very, very good win. Marquez would, if I was doing international fighters, would be right near the top of this list for the top fighters of the last 15 years. Timothy Bradley got in there and beat him quite clearly. Jesse Vargas, Brandon Rios to finish off his career. Obviously, he had 3 closest fights with Manny Pacquiao, 2-weight world champion, one of the hardest trainers, hardest workers you will ever see. A very underrated fighter, Timothy Bradley. And I think if you actually look at resumes, you take Bernard Hopkins' age out of it, Timothy Bradley's got a better resume after 2009 for their wins. But I think you take Hopkins' age into consideration, he just pips into that top 4 for me. But yeah, Timothy Bradley, top 5. Number 6, I've got Paul Williams, an absolutely brilliant, phenomenal fighter. Was a freak of nature. I think he was like 6'2", 6'3", as a welterweight. Had a Tommy Hearns vibe about him. 41-2, 27 KOs. Got wins over Winky Wright, Sergio Martinez, although he was knocked out in one of the worst knockouts you'll ever see in the rematch of that fight. But he's still a win on his resume. Kermit Cintron had the close one with Erislandy Lara. It's on his resume, but many people believe that was a big robbery. I do believe that Lara won that fight clearly. Ishida to finish off. I was going to say to finish off his career, but what actually happened to Paul Williams, I'm sure most people, if you're a boxing fan, you know it. At the age, I think it was 32, I can't remember the exact year now, 2011 or 2012, he actually had a really bad motorcycle crash and was left paralysed from the waist down whilst he was still in the prime of his career. It's a very, very sad story. Very sad what happened to him. He probably could have had another like 4 or 5 years at the top and could have added even more to his resume and maybe could have been higher in this list. Very sad when something like that happens to a fighter, or happens to anyone obviously, but when it happens to a fighter, one of them are like seriously body-abled people, absolute beasts, freaks of nature, especially a guy like him, and then he gets paralysed like that. It is very sad, but he still achieved a lot in his career, and to go into the top 6 American fighters of the last 15 years, even though his career was cut short by something horrific like that, deserves a massive clap and respect. It shows you how good of a fighter he was. Just imagine what could have been if he could have carried on. Now, number 7, my last guy I've got on the list, I've got Errol Spence. 128, lost 1, knocked out 22. Still active. We haven't heard what's happening next with him. Will he fight again? We don't know, but he's still classed as an active fighter right now. And people are underestimating and overlooking Spence now as a top-class fighter because of obviously what Crawford done to him. And Crawford did make him look average. Crawford did take him apart. But Crawford is one of the best to ever do it. And Spence has been through a lot of shit, man, outside the ring. He's had those 2 eye injuries. He's had the horrific car crash that almost killed him. And he had to like spend a load of time in hospital and a load of time recovering from. And despite all that, he's still got wins over Kell Brook, Lamont Peterson, although it was a bit of an older, washed up Lamont Peterson. But if I've got it on Tim Bradley's names or resume here, I'll have it for him too. But Tim Bradley did beat an unbeaten Lamont Peterson 9 years before Errol Spence beat him, which is why I've got Bradley higher on the list because of his wins like that. Two Garcias, Danny Garcia and Mikey Garcia. Sean Porter, very good win in a brilliant fight. Yordenis Ugas, all that, even though people were calling him washed up and saying he's on the slide, shows you he's a brilliant fighter. Stuff, a bit like Paul Williams, obviously not as extreme as outside the ring stuff has affected Errol Spence and how he performs in there. But despite all that, he's still a world-class, phenomenal fighter and deserves to be up there in this top 7. So yeah, they're my top American fighters of the last 15 years, people. That's the order I've got them in. Now it's over to you. Do you agree with the 7 I've got? Is there any I've missed? Maybe there's a clear one and you're thinking, Jack, what an idiot. Like, how the fuck have you missed this guy off? But I'm pretty sure after doing the research, they're the guys most people would have above the rest. Maybe you could chuck a Deontay Wilder in there. Maybe some people would have Gervonta Davis in there already, but I think he's got to do a little bit more. But yeah, and let me know if you agree with the order I've got them in too, because I'm sure some people will disagree with that. Debate with me in the comment section below. Always looking to talk boxing with you guys. Love passionately talking about it with other passionate fans. And if you're liking the videos you see, please like and subscribe. I've got a whole fresh new look on the channel. Hope you're enjoying it, and there's plenty more to come, people. Thank you.